Welcome to Shania Studio. In this playlist you can watch crime stories from all over the world, where apart from gaining knowledge about crime stories in other parts of the world, it can also provide knowledge about, for example, the culture and habits of the people in that country. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to this channel if you like our video. Thank you. I think our case this time is quite ironic. This case happened to a fisherman named Mark Carver. It is possible that he was the wrong person, in the wrong place, at the wrong time, or he was actually the perpetrator. Our research into this case has quite a lot of little things and details that we have to look into and pay attention to, because this case is not as easy as it seems. Before we continue, please support this channel by pressing the subscribe button and also turning on the notification, so that next time, for example, if I upload something exciting, you will be the first to know. This time, those of us who miss traveling or picnics can look at the Catawba River in South Carolina, America. A famous wide river with lots of fun activities, such as fishing, swimming, jet skiing or just boating. It turns out there are lots of fish in this river, and some people who live not far from the river use it to become fishermen there as a livelihood. The place is cool, and there are lots of activities there. We meet a woman named Ira Yarmolenko, who likes photography, often goes there and takes photos of all the activities on the Catawba River. Was born in Ukraine in 1988, her family migrated to America in 1996. Ira Yarmolenko studied at the University of North Carolina. She likes singing, dancing, playing music, climbing mountains, and also photography. She also works part-time in a cafe not far from her campus. Now I will introduce you to other characters who didn't know Ira Yarmolenko at all. His name is Mark Carver. He is a man who seems to have a straight life. His childhood was difficult because he had a disability, Down syndrome, low IQ, retarded thinking. And when he was 16 years old, he no longer went to school because of lack of funds. Then worked in a factory near his house. He has 3 daughters and 1 son. Mark lives not far from the Catawba River. He and his cousin, Neil Quesada, use the Catawba River as a place to find fish to sell, to make a living. Apart from that, sometimes they work as truck drivers to transport wood and stone. Neil Quesada is a very good person. Since he was a teenager, he raised Mark Carver, who had many shortcomings in thinking, especially after Mark's parents died. So they were very close, even though they were both married later. Until later on the 5th of May, 2018. On a hot and sunny day, a couple tried skiing on the Catawba River, and it was a great time skiing. They saw something strange on the banks of the Catawba River. At around 12:30 noon there was a car, which seemed to almost enter the river, over the boundary wall, but was still stuck in the grass, with the front door and back door open. According to the couple, this was quite suspicious. Then they tried to approach the car, and they saw another surprising thing next to the car. They finally called the police on 911.
Mulai menanyai semua orang yang tinggal di area tersebut, dan orang yang paling dekat dengan kejadian, sekitar 100 meter jaraknya,
I'm a boater on the Catawba River, above the I-85 bridge. There's a car that's run off an embankment, and there's a body laying there. I don't know if they're alive or not.
Shania Studio is a channel of crime stories from around the world. Please you like and subscribe this channel if you like our criminal stories. Thank you. The body they found next to the car was lifeless. She is Ira Yarmolenko. After the police came and examined Ira's neck, they found traces of a cable rope and blue ribbon, which made her choke and run out of breath. She also grasped the grass in her hands. Her hair and clothes were wet. The ground around her body looked like it had been trampled. And then the police started questioning everyone who lived in the area. And the person closest to the incident, about 100 meters away, was Mark Carver. The location where Mark Carver was fishing on the Catawba River was only tens of meters from Ira and her car were. So that morning, before Ira and her car was found, Mark Carver and Neil Cassidy also stopped by the Catawba River to buy salt bars. Neil went straight home, while Mark fished. A few hours later picked up his son from school and returned to his fishing spot. However, at that time, the police started to arrive, interrogating and suspecting the two of them. Police began to find out whether the two people had previous criminal records. There are some notes, but nothing too serious. Neil Cassidy said in 1995 that he had hit someone, but was released by police because of a misunderstanding. While Mark Carver in 2005 also beat people because he thought the person was a thief who wanted to steal his truck. No demands, due to misunderstanding. Apart from that, no scars were found on Ira's body. There were no traces of abuse, no foreign fingerprints, or even foreign DNA on Ira's body, clothes. Until then, forensic experts stated that it was very likely that Ira did this deliberately. According to experts, Ira intended to commit suicide by tying a tight rope around the steering wheel of the car and tying it around her neck. Also intends to make the car sink into the river, and Ira will also drown, but it seems the family doesn't believe this, and is sure someone is hurting Ira.
Power because the front wheels are spinning. I'm not going to try to explain why the front wheels were spinning. All we know is that they were spinning. The actual keys to the vehicle are right up in this area here. How she got outside the vehicle, well, we can play the what if. Obviously, I don't know how she ended up in the position that she was. We have taken the vehicle and taken it over to Belmont and stored it in their facilities over there for security. And we have done an inventory inside the vehicle.
Shania Studio is a channel of crime stories from around the world. Please you like and subscribe this channel if you like our criminal stories. Thank you. The police still seem suspicious of Mark Carver and Neil Cassidy, even though they both cried, saying that they were not the perpetrators. The police thought it was strange that Mark didn't hear any noise that morning, because the fishing place is very close to the scene of the incident. How come he doesn't hear the sound of Ira's car pulling up, or any other commotion? Until finally, Neil Cassidy and Mark Carver took a lie detector test. Both passed a lie detector test. They are both considered honest. Then Ira's car was taken to the police station for further inspection. Until 7 months later, in December 2008. Mark Carver and Neil Cassidy were very surprised, because their DNA was found in the front seat of Ira's car, even though the amount was very small. But strangely, their fingerprints were never found anywhere in the car. Until finally, Neil and Mark were interviewed again by the police. The following is a recording of an interview between Mark, who suffers from Down syndrome, and the police.
You go to the river, go fishing. About what time was it that? It was about 10 or 11. 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. Okay? You didn't see anybody. Neil didn't see anybody. Didn't hear anything. Didn't see anything. It hurt. The spray. Other than the spray, the jet ski. Didn't see anything. Did you see that little girl's car? Did you see that little girl? Did you touch that little girl's car? Did you go inside that little girl? You're positive. You never saw a car. How did you know a girl was killed? This was important. How did you say it on the TV? What was the TV tell you? Said she was strangled. How was she strangled? They said she was strangled. You can tell. Say how. All right. Oh, you're helping me a lot, man. You don't realize how much you're making my day. I can get my hands on you. What do you think? Choke you to death? What do you think? How would you choke? Well, did you ever hear her scream for help? You didn't hear her scream at all. She didn't make a sound. They got their hands around her throat. Snuffed her out. Had to be somebody big and fast. They said bigger than her. She didn't look anything. How much big she was? I don't know. I got one thing that's bothering me. I need to talk. You know what DNA is? What is it? DNA. Yeah, like a sample. And you know that DNA is like a fingerprint. It's just for you. Your DNA is different than mine. Mine's different than his. So it's all the same. Found your DNA inside. I'm yours and the other. Not only went around before you were in it. Now I'm not going to argue with you. What I am going to do is give you the opportunity to give your side of the story. I told you that. Got it? I didn't.
Until finally, in December 2008, Mark Carver and his cousin, Neil Quesada, were arrested on charges of murder and conspiracy against Ira Yarmolenko.
Not release details about a possible motive or what led to the arrests. At the bottom of an embankment along the Catawba River back in May, 20-year-old Ira Yarmolenko was found dead beside her car. Police say she was suffocated.
This thing that has happened has always just sort of eaten at us.
With no arrests in the first 7 months since she was killed,
I was pretty angry.
her family was in constant contact with investigators.
There have been stretches when we've walked every day.
The call early Friday morning is the one they were waiting for. 2 Gaston County men were arrested, 40-year-old Mark Carver and 54-year-old Neil Quesada, both charged with murder and conspiracy.
Once again, Neil Quesada and Mark Carver declared themselves innocent. They both always cry, stating that they didn't do anything about Ira. Although a bit of their DNA was found on the front car seat, there is no motive for them to do it. Keep in mind, there is no DNA or fingerprints on Ira's body or clothes, and there are no fingerprints on either of them on the entire car. This is what makes surprised. If they were wearing gloves, their DNA should not have been found in the car. And there were no traces of strangers' feet or shoes at the scene of the incident, apart from Ira's own feet and shoes. Even though the ground and grass around the car were said to be wet. The family stated that Mark Carver, a very good person, was afraid of the police. Meanwhile, Neil was already sick, and spent most of his time resting, because he was starting to be unable to work hard, due to suffering from back pain and heart disease. The police speculate that the possible motive was that at that time, she took a photo of Mark Carver and Neil Quesada fishing. Then they don't like being photographed, that's why they wiped out Ira's life. It sounds like a forced motive for the police. Just because the police found an Ira camera in the car, with no film in it. The police think it must have been Mark and Neil who took the film roll. Even though the camera only had DNA and Ira's fingerprints on it. Until then their trial began in October 2010. This was enough to make them both scared. Until the day before the trial, Neil Quesada became nervous and died of a heart attack. Until finally, only Mark Carver underwent the trial alone in court. Mark Carver insisted that he had never met or seen the victim, Ira Yarmolenko, in person. But according to the testimony of Detective William Terry, during the trial, Mark Carver knows very well Ira's height. About the same level as Mark's nose. This seems to make the jury think that Mark met Ira at that time and killed her. The jury and judge only looked at it based on a little DNA on the car seat and the words of the detective who said Mark knew the victim's height. Until finally the 21st of March 2011. Mark Carver was found guilty and imprisoned for life, without being allowed to be released on bail. This made the family and many people angry, because DNA and fingerprints were never found on Ira's body or on her neck. Even if he was wearing gloves, the police couldn't prove it by finding his gloves. And remember, there are no foreign footprints at the scene. Until 2012, a woman named Christ Mama, from a NGO defending the innocent in North Carolina, do her own investigation. Because she felt the Mark Carver case was too forced. Christ Mama managed to check the recording of Mark's interrogation with detectives. And this recording was never shown to the judge or jury at trial. In this recording it turns out, Mark Carver is never said she was high in his nose. Instead, he just guessing the height of a girl in general.
If y'all were standing up, looking at each other, would she be looking you in the eye? Stand up, show about how tall she was. Probably about. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I understand. Okay.
And Detective William Terry apparently never interviewed Mark directly. He only knew Mark discussed Ira's height from many people's conversations. This began to make the jury regret their decision. But there is one more. What about DNA Mark Carver and Neil Quesada in the front seat of Ira's car? Christ Mama managed to meet a field investigator who examined Ira's car while still on the edge of the Catawba River. They finally claimed that at that time at the location, they asked for ID Mark Carver and Neil Quesada. Mark and Neil gave their ID, in the hands still wet. Officers who received their ID, then brought the ID to other officers, close to Ira's car. The officer then put the Mark Carver and Neil Quesada ID in the front seat of Ira's car. Because the officer while checking on the car dashboard. That's when it was estimated that DNA Mark and Neil sticky from ID to Ira's car seat. This is called DNA transfer.
That the owner of that DNA committed the crime. Well, think again. My guests today have published an article in the Journal of Forensic Sciences titled, "Could Secondary DNA Transfer Falsely Place Someone at the Scene of a Crime?"
Chris Mummer even invited a police officer to return to the scene. to prove that the sound from the location of Ira's car really could not be heard to Mark fishing, because the wind there turned out to be very strong. After Chris met the judge and the jury, then a re-investigation was carried out, until finally, without going through an official trial, the court in 2018 freed Mark Carver and declared him and his cousin, Neil Casada, innocent. But it seems that there is a court fee charged to Mark Carver, worth $100,000, which was then paid by the NGO, led by Chris Mummer.
What's the first thing you're going to do now that you're free? Go see my grandbaby?
There's no evidence left in this case. All the evidence that was used, that was false evidence used at trial to convict him, has been decimated. There's nothing left.
What happened actually with Ira Yarmolenko? Investigators, and those who carry out the autopsy, again on their theory. Based on the facts and findings, Ira really wants to eliminate her own life. How and what is the motive? You can Google about Ira ensnares her own neck and bind it on the steering wheel of the car on the edge of the Catawba River. It's not that I'm lazy to discuss, but talking about the way the Ira did, prohibited on YouTube. But I want you to comment about our case, this time below. Yes, if you like this video, don't forget to click like, and also the share button. For the first time to stop by but not yet subscribed, don't forget to click on the subscribe button, and also turn on the notification, so that next time, if for example I upload a new video, you are the first person to know. And don't forget to watch all my other videos. Still do good think. Thanks.